Hello, welcome back to this second episode. So in the second episode, we are going to basically implement MVC versioning, routing, and Prisma into our project. So we are going to see how to implement the MVC architecture, bring in like the concept of controllers. We also look at the concept of the Express router to organize all our routes into different chunks. We shall also just go ahead and integrate in Prisma so that we can start working with Prisma, and we'll go ahead and also add in MongoDB. As you can see here, I have MongoDB that we have already created IOPS API project, and we went ahead and um, we went and added in the data to this. Okay, we went ahead and created in this, we went ahead and added in the data. So just going to look at if you see browse collections, you will see that we already have a project which is called IPS, and we created a database called IPS database, and you can see we have already the customer here that we added in. We have so far two entries that we added in our database, and we're just going to go ahead and see how to create uh, the Prisma. You can see I have the Prisma here, and we connect it with MongoDB. As you can see in the environmental variables, I have the MongoDB string that is communicating with DB here, and we'll go ahead and also see versioning. So we'll modify our index to look like this. Now you can see we have app API v1 customer router. If I go to the customer router, it has all the routes for the customer, and we'll go ahead also implement all these different controllers. We'll see what controllers are, and we're going to see how to create the controller. While we have like this create controller, get customer, and this, and we put them together with MongoDB and Prisma so that we interact with our DB very nicely. So let's dive in and get started. Hello, welcome back. So in this episode, we're just going to look at versioning, MVC versioning, and routing. In our previous episode, we set up a Node.js project. We initialized it with TypeScript. We created a starter template, and eventually we started on our API. And we have this API running, and also we tested it using Postman, and this is the response so far. Okay, so just want to include two things today. Want to include the MVC architecture, and we're also going to include the versioning plus routing. So let's start with the MVC. MVC, if you have been around backend, or if it's your first time to hear MVC is model view controller architecture. And I wrote some notes here in the documentation about what MVC is. But basically what MVC helps is for organizing the code for easy maintainability and the quality of the code base. As I said here, most software developer teams use MVC software design pattern to improve maintainability and the code base quality. So just going to look at what this one is, but basically a model is what designs are, or what defines the structure of a resource. The way you see, for instance, you can have customer model, and it is having all the details of what's supposed to be in the customer, the data types of each individual field in that model, and so on and so forth. And that is the model. As you can see here, as the name implies, is a design that typically bounds the entity of a specific software system. And in our case, we are going to use Prisma to define all our models. Okay. And then the second one is the view. So the view is the part that users interact with. Okay. it is like the front end of the application. So the view and the model and the controller are on the back end, and the view is on the front end. So in our case, the view is going to be React Native. The view can be Next.js application. They can all act as our view. There is a way actually you can also build like HTML within here. You can just go ahead and also put in the client side. You put like HTML, of which you're not going to do since we are building the API. But we are going to see in action that the view is going to be the React Native. And then the controllers. Controllers are just like a function, or are those functions which communicate with the models. For instance, we can have a model of the customer, and this customer, we can communicate or interact with this customer model using the controller. Basically, they're like server actions in Next.js. Server actions are basically the controllers in Node.js. Okay? They just simply like those functions which are going to interact with the database, like mutating it, getting data, and everything. Those are the controllers. Okay? So if you're just going to go into our application here, we're just going to put only one thing, since we said the modules are going to live in Prisma here. Okay, models are going to live within the Prisma here. So what is the models? So inside here, we're just going to have basically one controllers. So within the source folder, I'm just going to create this. I'm just going to say controllers, controllers, just like this. Write controllers, and for instance, we can write a controller. We're just going to write a function, for instance, let's say customers. So all the controllers that are for customers are going to live into this file called customers.ts. And an example of this can be, for instance, the way we have here. We can just go and get this, not this one, sorry. This one here. This function we have here can be a controller. Just going to cut this. Sorry, I just want to extract this properly. Okay, so I have here this gate. I can just go to this customer.ts and I say export export function, and then I paste this. Just going to write async. Just say here async. I just want to create this as a function. Let's say get customers, customers, and you can just say is going to be equal to an async function. Since it's in TypeScript, we have to have a return type. Here I'm just going to say request handler, just like this. Just a minute, and you can just like remove all these. What have I done? Okay, just going to go ahead and just put here request. So this is supposed to be okay. Let me just first copy this. I'm just going to instead do export async function get customers. Okay, and just like this, we can paste in this one. Okay, async get customers. This function is going to take in request and response, just like this. Okay, just like this, and we can define the way we had done. We can just say request, which is from Express. What is that? Here we can just say request, and the request comes from the Express, and then also the response, and the response comes from also Express, just like this. So we have here, let me just drop this. So we have here this async function get customers. This is a familiar function. Let's say it is going to be fetching and then it returns. So you can just say return raise.status of 200.json of customers. Okay, so we have this, and I can just go to the index and I just say comma and I just say get customers, just like this. Okay, so this is exactly what we're talking about. These are functions. As you can see, the get customers are functions. Now, not everything is working. I'm just going to go ahead and add one more user, one more customer, which is going to be Joel. Or look at Joel, and here I'm just going to say, or look at example, just like this. Let's go back to our API and make the same request. And you can see now we have now one more person here, which is working very well. So this one is we have added the controller here. And this controller is a function that's going to be interacting with the database to fetch all the data we want, as you can see here. And we are putting it in the customer. So we have more controllers: get customers, create a customer, edit customer, create customer, and so on and so forth. So that is the controllers here. As we said, the models are going to be taken by Prisma, and the view is going to be our React Native application that is going to communicate with this. Okay, moving on to versioning. So versioning, I'm going to join versioning with routing. Okay, so versioning is where we have the version, different versions of our API. So instead of having one version or having an API as one application, we can have different versions. Okay, we can have different versions so that a person who comes to the application can users who are using the application, if you are bringing new updates into the API, you have to maintain the original state, but then you bring in the new implementation, you bring it on a new version. So that the people are using version 1 or version 2, they remain using it. And in the newer versions, you have seen this in most documentations, even in most applications. If you have been using Next.js and they bring the new version, the old version remains working, but then they bring in the new changes in the new version. And that's the same architecture you're going to use. So there are so many ways of versioning. There is two versioning system, not two, but there are so many. But the common one is the route-based versioning and the header-based versioning. So you have header-based versioning and route-based versioning. Header-based versioning is like the way you see Sanity. Like you find the version, or Stripe, you find the version, you can define it like in the environmental variables, then you pass it in the header. Then the route-based versioning is where you have the version within the URL. Okay, like you have, for instance, here API version 1 products, API version 2 products, something like this. So basically, we can just go to our API here, and we can just like say API v1 customers, just like this. And we can just say create another version. They say, but this is not VI, V1, and they say V2. So we can have API V2, and then we change like this. We go here in the controllers. Let's say this one is get V2 customers. Let's say here we can just like get V2 customers. And I'm just going to go ahead and make only maybe one customer. Maybe we added more details to these customers. Let me just reduce this to only one, and let's add in more things. Let me just say we added ID, let's say 1. I'm just going to go here and we say location, Los Angeles, and then maybe, yeah. So you say we added in more details on version 2. So just go here, simply I've just created another controller called get v2 customers, and then so you can just call this. When we go here, I can have API v2, and then instead I call v2 customers, just like this. So if we go back to our API here to test it, and you just do like this, you will see that we have an error because cannot get the slash customers. Now we have changed everything. It is, for instance, on API v1 stroke customers. If I enter localhost, let's see, slash, I think it should be like slash. Okay, so API v1 customers, let's go back. API v1 customers, send. And you can see now we have the API v1 customers here. If I change to v2 customers, you can see we have this one. So the people who are using this API, if you're using the version 1, it will be working. If you're using version 2, it will also be working. Okay, so this is how we use versioning. Okay, and this is to improve. If you are bring new changes in the API, this will be so much helpful in that sense. Okay, so moving on. Let's go back to the documentation. So we have looked at the versioning. Let's look at the router. So the Express router is a feature of Express framework that allows you organize your routes into smaller modular pieces. Instead of defining all routes directly in the main application file, you can create a separate router files for different parts of your application. So how we use this Express router with router-based versioning is create a router file, define the routes in a separate file, use this router in the main, and then example of implementing. So for instance, we can create the way we created the controllers in the source. I'm just going to go in the source, create. So let me first explain about the router. So eventually you're going to find that we have all the things like this. You'll find you have something like this. You don't want to find in your API because we're having, for instance, let me first give you an example. So we have about how many resources? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So you have about 21. Let me say calculator, get a calculator. I just want to give you an idea. So you'll find that you have these kind of routes. You have 21 times 4. So this is the 84 routes or 84 endpoints you are going to have, because for each resource you have the get, the post, delete, edit, update. You have all these routes here. Okay, so you will have like 84, and you can imagine putting 84. These ones are not even 84. You will have all these routes here. This is very hard to maintain in a code base. You cannot accept to have something like this. Okay, you don't want to have this. What you want is at least to have 21. You will have about 21 routes, these 21. But all inside those routes, for instance, we can have the customer route, which has all the routes for the customers. The gate, the put, the delete for only the customers. That's what something we want to drive at. So let me just go and delete or remove all these other ones. Okay. So we need to create the routes. So just go here and let's create a new folder called routes, like this. And in these routes, for instance, we also have, for instance, customers. So you can just say customer. These will be the customer routes. Okay. So you can say customer.ts, just like this. So here we are going to define all the routes. So the first thing is to create a router. So can say const customer router is equal to express. So you first get express. You can first go ahead and import express here. Import express from express, just like this. And we can just say express dot just a second. And you can see in the express we have this called router. So you can just say this is a router, and this router helps us to define all the routes using this customer router. After that, we just go down here and say export default customer router, just like this. And then in between here, we are going to create different endpoints using this customer router. So for instance, we can just say customer router.get. From here, you can see .get, and then we define exactly what we did in the index. So I'm just going to go here in the index. For instance, get this, these two here. Let me just cut them. And let's go to the routes here. So instead of using app.get, I'm just going to use customer router.get. Now for the versioning, let me also say customer router. So for the versioning, let me just take off this. So now we have customer router. So this one acts as our app. The way we are using it in the index, it acts as our app. And now we can just say something like get customers, and let's import this at controllers. And now you can see we're starting to use the at because of what we did in the TS alias. So we have now API v1 customers, and then we pass in the controllers. Okay. Now we can just now go ahead and call this in the index. Okay. We can call this in the index. So if you just go back to the index, you can see you can just go ahead and call this like this. Now, when you are defining something, the API and version 1, you will notice that these ones are going to be constant for every route. For instance, even if you are creating for products, it will be API v1 products. If you are creating for users, API v1. So this prefix, I will cut this prefix like this, and I will take it to the index. Now I will have app.use, I guess. Is it app.use? Yeah. So we can now use app.use, because now this is like, we're just going supposed to pass in the, like this, like a middleware. Whatever you use, just mean like you are passing in a middleware. So here we pass in this slash API v1. So this one is always going to be used just like this. Then comma, we pass in the router. So the customer router we created. So you can say this customer router, just like this. Just a second. So here you don't have to pass in this, because already on the customer router, we have slash. So if you put slash, and again you put it here, there will be 2 double slashes. So you have just like say slash API v1. This one is going to be a prefix. So if you want to prefix anything, you can prefix it here. the versions, any folder or anything, you can prefix it here. And then here we pass in the router. This router is going to hold all our routes. For instance, we can have the one of API v1, we can have the one of API v2. I can have, for instance, the one that is going to be accepting the ID. Like maybe here we are going to be having get single customer. Okay, so I can just go ahead and create this. Let me go to the controllers and let me just first remove this v2. Let's just work with this one. So you can just go ahead and just say export, just like this. Get single customer, get single, or you can just say get maybe customer by ID, get customer by ID. Okay, and then so it means it will get this from the params const ID is equal to, I think it's supposed to be request dot params, just like this. We get the ID, and maybe we can just say here customers dot find, and we just say const customer. Okay, there is no ID. We can just like put in the IDs here. Let me just first remove this. Let me add in ID 1. Okay, let's say ID 2 here, and let's say here ID 3. Okay, so we can say const customer is equal to customers dot find. Okay, and then we say here we have a customer, and then we just want to return customer dot ID is equal to ID, just like this. So okay, they're saying that comparison types number and string have no overlap. Okay, so this one is supposed to change it. This one comes when it is a string. So we can just say, can we just say int? I can just like convert it here. Okay, to pass int of ID, just like this. And then let's go ahead and return the customer, just like this. So we have this get customer by ID. This is our controller. I will just go to the routes where we have get customers. Now I can have another route of get, which actually takes in ID. And this is how we pass in the ID in this. We pass in something like this, customers dot slash ID, and I can just go ahead and just import this get customers by ID. So whenever we just go to this route, we call this, now you're getting the sense or the concept that we have the route, it will going to have the root, the endpoint. When you just go slash customers, go slash customers ID, it will just run this endpoint. So inside the index file, where are we having error in the index somewhere? Okay, we don't have this v2, so I can just like remove this. Okay, even these requests, we no longer have them. So you can just go down here and I have this customer route. So customer route is having all the routes about the customer. So the customer can have 10 routes. They will all be encapsulated, or they will be all organized into this router. Okay, so if we just go back to our API, sorry, I'm just going to go here to the API and let's get v1 customers. Let's see. So we still have all our customers, and let's go and pass in like ID1. So if I just say customers and I pass in 1, so this is another route. So you can see it gets us this customer with ID1. If I pass in 2, just like this, it will just give us the second customer. So you can see now we have 2 routes, but these 2 routes, they're all under customer router. So the customer router can help us you define all these endpoints just like this within the customer, and it is very easy to know that all the routes for the customer, they are all inside the routes here. Okay, which is really great. So at least right now we have 2 routes, and we're trying to get the shape of now into our app. You can see we have the controllers, we have the routes, and everything is communicating with the index. Okay, yeah, so we just have something like this in the future. So having done that, we have just like explained this. I went here and I talked about the versioning, the router, and even the summary here. So now it's time now we set up Prisma, and we start getting into the actual work of what you're supposed to do. So the first thing we're just going to do is we are going to create a Prisma instance, and this is the connection between Prisma and our database. Okay, so just going to create this Prisma instance. So let's create a folder called db inside the source and create db.ts, and then we add this code. So I will just go, if you just like have been working with Next.js, you know about this. So I will just go ahead inside the source. Let's create another folder called db for database, and inside this let's create db.ts, and let's add this. So basically this one gets a Prisma instance just like this, and it gives it to our application to use. So every time we want to interact with the database, we'll just go ahead and use this. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and connect our MongoDB. So we are only remaining with getting the actual MongoDB and start working with our database. So let me just go to MongoDB. Okay, MongoDB. So just go MongoDB. If you don't have an account, create a MongoDB account. Okay, me, I'm just going to go ahead and log in into my own account. Okay. Yeah, if you don't have an account, you can just go ahead and create an account, and you can see also MongoDB, they have versions as you can see here. So I'll just go ahead and create a new project, scroll down, create a new project, and I'm just going to say IPS API. I'll create a new project called IPS API. Project name is going to be IPOS API. Okay, and then go next. These are the members, so you can just say here there is no need of doing anything or adding any members, simply create the project. Okay, so the first thing is go ahead and create a cluster. Okay, so you can just go ahead and choose the free version. Leave it cluster 0. You can leave it AWS, and everything, just leave it the way it is. Create deployment. Okay, then we have this. So you can just like go ahead and copy this, like the password, you can copy it here. And then username, it is okay, it is just this one. I'm just going to go ahead and leave it the way it is. Now there is here add a connection IP address here. Okay, so you can just click on this network access because there is create a database user and create this network access. Click on this network access, and this is just to allow to add one more IP. So just go ahead and add here IP address, and just going to go ahead and just say 0.0.0.0 stroke 0. So this one is allowing, this is to allow allow access. You can even just click on allow access from everywhere. You will see that when you click on it, it makes this 000. So just click ahead and go and confirm this. Okay, and this is allowing access from everywhere. Okay, so as it is doing that, we can just go back here and let's create a database user. Okay, then choose a connection method. So here you can just choose like different one. There is even MongoDB, there is campus, there is drivers. Any of this one actually works. Node.js like this. I think I just want to the one with instructions. Okay, let me go back. Let's first go the campus. Not like this one. Okay, this is the one I want. Okay, this is the one I want. So just click on this, connect with MongoDB campus. Just come here and you have this connection string. Okay, you have this connection string. You can even see that they give you this with your cluster and everything. And by the way, there are so many ways, and depending on which way you have used it, it will give you a different connection string. I want you to see the one that is here. Okay, this, it just ends like this, and it has stroke.net, then the DB, and this, if you just go back here, you can see even it ends like with MongoDB.net. So just copy this. Okay, it has already your password. And one thing take care of is that they don't include the database. As you can see here, they don't include the database. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy up to here. Okay, if I can paste it down here, you see this first part here, this one here is the same up to .NET. They are the same. So I can just copy this, cut it, and then replace with this one here. And paste it here. So it will be like this .NET, and then you pass in the name of your DB. Let's say here we say IPOS database, just like this. Okay, here you pass in. Most people just always get errors on failing to get where to put the name of the database, or they even forget to pass the name of the DB. It is very important. Even if you don't put these ones here, this, and just like this, it will still work. Okay, it will still work. So this is how it's supposed to be. After getting this DB URL, we can now just go ahead and remove this. Okay, so I have now the DB. Of course, I'll just go ahead and change this in later in the actual API. So after doing that, you can click on done. Okay, just really nice, really nice. I can just now go ahead and we have created the DB user and we have the IP access list, done everything. So we can just go ahead and do some migrations. If you just go now, right now in the data lake here, so we don't have anything right now on this. So the next thing is creating the schema. So you can just go to Prisma and just go and open here, and let's go to Prisma. So on the Prisma, you can just click on get started here, and we can just get started with start from scratch, and then click on MongoDB. So they will give you here all the things you need to do, npm avoidance, all those ones. Click connect to this. So you have this, and you can see they do the same thing. They pass in the name of the database. So moving on, creating your Prisma schema, and they give you something create like this. So let me just go ahead and copy one of the models here. Okay, just Control C, and let's add it here, and let's call this, for instance, customer. Customer, just like this, and he has the ID. So if you just go here in our customer, in the controllers, you can set the customer has an ID, name, and the phone. So you can just copy these ones and they just come here. So our customer has, for instance, an ID, which we already have here. ID has a name, so I can change this to a name. Okay, this one to email, and maybe we're just going to make it also unique so that each customer is unique. And then we have the phone. So here, just going to have a name and then a phone. Okay, let's remove the author and all these other things, just like this. But we need also to add the created art. So you can just like continue down somewhere. I'm just going to come here, and I'm just going to say created art, which is going to be, I think it's daytime. Okay, and I think it has a default, and at default, is it now? Something like this now. The same thing is updated at. So here we have, I think it's updated at, which is also daytime. And this one is default is going to be, let me check out the default for this. Okay, so you can just go back to the documentation. Let me just go here and I search for Prisma. I can just go here to Prisma, and I can just look at one of these ones, and let's get to this created art and these two. Just copy them and let's add them here. Okay, just like this. Okay, so we have now the ID, email, name, phone. Okay, so this is what you call the model now. Okay, in the MVC architecture, we have defined the model, and the model is always telling the database the structure of this resource. So for instance, a customer must have a name, email, and the phone number with this created art and updated art. Nice. So after creating this one, we can now run the migrations. Okay, we can run what we call the migrations. I'm just going to go down, and migrations means that we are pushing this to communicate with the newly created database. We have our database here, and this one, if you come to the schema, you see they're just like saying we're using the provider MongoDB, and in the environmental variables we are looking at database URL. So I'm just going to go ahead and push this in our database by running. So let me clear this by running npx prisma db push. So this one And when you do that, you can also stop here the actual server. Let's go ahead and run this. Okay, and this one is going to do a number of things. It will push our database and of course allow, and it also will generate a new Prisma client. As you can see, it has generated a new Prisma client. So in other words, we can communicate with this model now. So I'm just going to go ahead to the controllers, and let's create a one controller for create. So here we have, for instance, async function. This we can just do one for create. So for instance, create a customer, create customer, just like this. It has the request and the response, and instead we're just going to first get const, and we can just get, for instance, our things. We are accepting name, email, phone. I think those are the ones we can confirm here in the Prisma schema. So we have the name, okay, email, phone. We have these three things actually. They're the ones we just are getting here in the controller, the name, email, and phone, and we're getting this from the request. Now you think, so the request comes with a number of things, and one thing it comes, and as you can see, we have on the request the body, the queries, the params, the headers. This is very important when you're trying to access different things. If you send a form, if you send something in from the form, they come when they're in the body. If you send anything from like a question mark, like a param, so stroke ID, it comes as a param. If you send, it can come as a query. If you send, for instance, a search. We're going to see how to use all these ones, of course, in this course. Let's start with the easy one, which is the body. So we get the name, email, and the phone from the body. After getting them, we just say try catch. So you can just say try catch here. And in the first one, you just say const new customer is going to be equal to await. So now is why you use the Prisma, which is DB. We get from the DB dot customer. You can say dot create. Okay. And then here in the create, we can pass in the data, right? In the data, we define this name, email, and the phone, just like this. Okay, after creating this customer, we can just go ahead and return. So you can just say return return response dot status. For instance, this one is 201, a new resource has been created, dot JSON with the new custom. Okay, just like this. So this one should be able to create a new stuff. Of course, here remove this. So here in this the console.log, we can just go ahead and just say console.log the error, and maybe you could also just return this error, but just say only do the console.log, just like this. So we have our now the controller, create customer controller that we can call. So just go to the routes. So you can just go to the routes here, and you just say, for instance, when a person goes to customers, and this is going to be a post request now. So you say dot post, and it goes to the customers. It should create customer. So create customer like this. So we now call the create customer when someone goes here. So just go to this in the our postman. I'm just going to go to this customers, just like this API v1 customers, and I will just go to the body here. Okay, and you can just click on raw, and this one gives you the JSON. Okay, I'm just going to copy this exactly, and let's paste it here. So we want to create a new customer. We're not going to pass in the ID. We want to pass in the name. Let's call this customer maybe Alan Smith. No, just call it actually Elon Musk. Why not? Elon Musk. And then this, I'm not sure if that's the spelling. Just say here, Elon, Elon at x.com, just like this. And the phone number, maybe less +1 or something. I'm just going to go here and I put plus maybe 1 or something. So I'm just going to go ahead and send this request and see what happens. If I send this, okay, so you can see here, error, connect refused, blah blah, and you say view in the console. So we can also here in the console here, we should be having something. Oh, we don't have this running. So npm run dev. We had to stop to the server. So just have the server running, localhost this. Let's go back to this here. And we have localhost v1 customers. So when you hit this endpoint here, what happens is you hit this one, you'll go in, they will ask which type of request are you making. For instance, the request is supposed to be get. So if, for instance, if you just say get, it will be getting the customers. If we say here, we change this to post. Okay, now that's why you see here it is bringing the body here, the raw, and we have this data sent. So it will just go here, it says you're going to customers and it is a post request. So it will go and say, okay, if I go to this route, which is under, of course, the customer route, customers, and it is a post request, it will run this function called create customer. And the create customer is getting the details from the request. As you can see here, we are sending this in the request here. These ones you see here, raw, the name, email, and the phone, they are the ones we are sending as the body. They will come and we extract them here, and we're trying to create a customer using it. So let's just go ahead and run this. Send and wait. Okay, so you can see now we have a new return here, which says the ID, the name, the email, the name, and the phone number. And then we have the created art and updated art. Okay, so you have managed to create a new resource or a new customer by this API endpoint. So we can just now go and modify this get customers, for instance, and we can just go, instead of having this, I'm just going to remove this, and instead let's do a try catch. So I'll just do try catch just like this, and let's move this return in here. Let's say const customers is going to be await db dot customer dot find many, just like this. Okay, and we can just even go ahead and say order by. So we can pass in order by, since we have the created art created, just put here this. So you can say created art, and then we say descending. So one start with the one that I've just created right now to be the first on top. And after getting these customers, we return them with a 201. And you can see TypeScript here is working. Okay, so of course we can just go ahead and console.log error, just like so. Okay, so now after having this get customers. I'm just going to go ahead and go to back to Postman, and let's create a new one. Let's create Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg. If the spelling is wrong, don't say anything. You can write the correct one. I'm just going to put here Mark at Facebook, for instance, facebook.com. Okay, this one just say +2. These are just like just random thing, random numbers. So I'm just going to go ahead and say customers, a post. So this one is going to create a new post. So if I send, okay, so it has created this a new entry in our DB. So we can now switch back to post. If we just go to get customers, run this, you can see now we get an array of 2 customers. And if we just go to the find, let's go to get single, get customer by ID. It takes in the request and the response. We get the ID from the params, and now let's do also the try catch. So I'm just going to get these. Sorry, just get all these. Let's do a try catch. So here just do try catch, and in the try block, let's put this. Now that we have all the customers in the DB, we could just say const customer is going to be equal to await DB dot customer dot find unique, and here we're just going to pass in where, and where you can just say ID. Now since this is a string also, it has no problem here, and we return the customer. So that one should be just good enough, like that. Okay, so let's just go ahead and to back to this. So if we hit now the endpoint, if we go back to the routes, you can see we have 3 routes. The one for creating a new customer, getting all customers, and also getting a customer by ID, where we pass in the ID. So I'm just going to, let me first copy this ID, Control C, and let's go to get customers slash this ID and send. And voila, we have this one customer like this. Okay, so now this integrates Prisma into our system or into our application, and this is how we are going to use Prisma, use versioning. So we have now routing, versioning, all of them working perfectly in our application. So thank you so much for watching this episode. So in the next episode, we're just going to go ahead and create different models, the actual models that we are going to use. We might just like pump this up, the customer model, we add more things to it, and then we start building the API. We have a lot of models to work on, so we're just going to be making sure that each video at least we cover 1 or 2 models so that we can do it more faster and we get this API done. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.